all Canadians across the country against this legislation and against the idea that we need to sacrifice our civil liberties for security. Before we start, can I ask you guys to pull in a bit? Because we've got some great speakers here. I would like to introduce, as our first speaker, Bob Chamberlin. He's the Vice President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. He's here to give a traditional welcome, as well as speak to us about this legislation. So Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Nuguam Ori guys like a Kwikwasut'inuxw Muskamag Dowdino. Agila Casla Slavutooth Squamish Musquil like Yuktamas Wheelam Megas Nunwakolas but Nala. My traditional name is Owari. I thank the host nations of the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and the Musqueam for allowing us to gather here today. And I want to tell you all how grateful I am to see each and every one of you taking time out of your Saturday to stand united here as citizens of Canada, to stand up for democracy, to stand up for justice, and to stand up for the human rights that we all enjoy. We as citizens of a democracy would fully expect the government to look out for our best interests, to safeguard our rights, to ensure that we have opportunities in order to express our concerns in whatever venue and whatever manner that we see fit. But when we turn and look at Bill C-51, it's extremely troubling for all of us to know that the government is expanding the role for CSIS and the RCMP, a sharing of information beyond what they originally intended for, and to know that there is not oversight at the Privacy Commission to meet that broadening scope of work from CSIS and the RCMP. It's like having one of us under a very small umbrella and then putting a whole bunch of other people underneath it and expecting that it's going to keep us dry. If we are to expand the role of CSIS and the RCMP in the sharing of information, there must be an equal amount of expansion of resources for the Privacy Commissioner.
Hear, hear. Well said.
Now, when we as citizens of this democracy feel like our human rights are being infringed upon, we would expect to turn to the judicial system of Canada to find remedy, to find a ruling on the situations that we have concern with.
Remedy.
One of the key pieces that I see wrong with Bill C-51 is that very judiciary that we would turn to for justice is going to be involved with CSIS, involved with the RCMP to authorize that very infringement that we would turn to them for a ruling on. This absolutely lays waste to democracy in Canada, and it is simply unacceptable that they would conduct themselves in this way.
Hear, hear.
I have often said that if Canadians want a report card, or if you want to have an indicator of how well democracy is functioning in Canada, I've always said, watch how the First Nations respond to various things. Now, we as First Nations enjoy a very clear presence within Canada, constitutionally protected rights. We have the first declaration of title in Canada with the Tsilhqot'in people, but we have engagement on virtually a daily basis on the Constitution of Canada, Section 35(1), and Supreme Court of Canada rulings. So when we stand up as First Nations and we say there's an issue and there's a problem with a bill, I want everybody to understand that it is simply because of our being in tune with the need and the function of government that allows us that space to constantly stand up and say, in our language, it's just not right what the Harper government is doing today. From the very beginning of Harper's governance, He made it very clear that the development of resource-based projects were primary and key and foundational to his government, to the point where he's deemed them to be in the national interest of Canada, which what I understand places it in a higher level where if we stand up and we have issue with something that they're doing, it is something that they can then come down extremely hard upon us as Canadian citizens. And Bill C-51 will broaden out that tool. It will allow the government to shut us down as citizens. And we must keep in mind that the Harper government had a look and scan the various legislations and various processes that are there to safeguard ourselves and to look after the environment, and has removed all of these as impediments to the progress that he envisions. So the very issue of balance from government is now done away with. And those balances are what give us confidence in this government to look after the environment, to look after the very land which supports us as human beings in Canada. And Harper does not have that interest. I brought with me a picture of a very dear friend of mine. This appeared on the Prince George Free Press. Of course, this is Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. And you all know that this man stands at every opportunity, first to look after his grandchildren, like many of us would do. But here it is this man a terrorist?
He's our brother!
This is what Bill C-51 is going to do to Canadians. For when you want to be the ones to stand up and engage in civil disobedience, or stand up in a protest and say what the government is doing is incorrect, you run the opportunity of being branded a terrorist. This, in Canada, a democracy, the envy of many countries in this world, this is shameful. But as I look around and I see so many wonderful people here today, I can't think of a greater, more wonderful group of people to be branded a terrorist with. And I want to thank you for being here today, because what we have now is a very clear direction that the government is doing to do away with all of your rights in a democracy here in Canada. We have a federal election coming up. Who wants to make this an issue that we want every MP that's running to speak to? I believe the only thing more sacred to a federal politician other than the economy and making profits for their corporate friends is your vote. That is sacred to the MPs of this country, and it is up to every one of us to ensure that this topic is put in front of every candidate across this country to make sure that we safeguard the very democracy which is in place for all of us to enjoy.